Hi, I'm Ken Kessler, and welcome to the Sounds of Christmas podcast. If you're new to this podcast, I'd like to start by saying thank you for joining us. If you're not so new, welcome back. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Now, to avoid any confusion, I want to say that there won't be any music played here. This is a place for conversation. I'll talk about Christmas music and some related topics, sometimes by myself and sometimes with guests. If you're looking for music, just go to soundsofchristmas.com and click on the tree or the player on the front page or on the Listen Now page. We play the best variety of Christmas music all year long. Well, except in October, when we play the best variety of Halloween music. I'm very happy to welcome musician, producer, songwriter, award-winning composer, Tommee Profitt to the podcast. Hi, Tommee.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Appreciate you having me.
Happy to have you on. You have quite the impressive resume for anybody who doesn't know the name Tommee Profitt. You've worked with lots of people that our listeners certainly know, Hunter Hayes, Avril Lavigne, to name just a couple. You produced a rap single. Is Let You Down, is it rap? Is it mainstream? How would you even?
Yeah, it'd be probably in the hip hop category for sure.
Okay.
On Top 40 radio, yeah.
Because you produced the single for NF, and it hit number 1 on the Top 40 chart, and it's over 1 billion streams worldwide. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That was a crazy experience. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah. You've also produced a cover of In the End by Linkin Park, not Linkin Park's version, a cover of that. That's got over 20 billion views and streams across the board. You've got productions that have 9 platinum singles, 16 gold singles, 2 platinum albums, and a gold album. Again, wow. That's amazing. And that's in a relatively short time, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say probably the last 5 or 6 years or so.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Thank you.
If you're very welcome. If you want to check out his work, find Tommee on YouTube. The videos will blow you away. It's incredible. I do have one question to ask you, a term that I'm not familiar with. It's called sync placement, and you've got tons of your productions placed sync placement in stuff that lots of people have seen. What exactly is a sync placement?
So yeah, a sync placement is just when you have your music used in a TV show or like a movie trailer or TV promo. That's like a big part of what I do, is like cinematic music for promos and trailers and the TV and film industry. So they use it in the show. And so when they use your song in the show, it's just called a sync placement, a sync license, that they use your song in the show.
And cinematic music is something that has been huge for you for a long time. Your Christmas album, The Birth of a King, that came out last year, you referred to it as a cinematic Christmas album. And it's been something that has been on your plate, something you've been working towards for quite a while.
Yeah, actually, I've wanted to make that album since 2005. So it was exactly 15 years that I'd just been planning it, dreaming it, just saying one day I'm going to do this. And then I just never could get around to it because I had too much on my plate. And then I guess it took a worldwide pandemic and quarantine for me to finally have time to myself to get some of it done. That's literally why I was able to do it last year, 2020, was just because no one was kind of going out and doing recording sessions. And I was able to just lock in and work on this project that I wanted to make it since I was in college.
Now, cinematic music to me evokes the idea that you listen to the song and you can sort of see a movie of it in your head, sort of see the story. Is that what you mean by that, or is there more to it? Yeah,
it's funny. I mean, I think people probably define cinematic a little differently across the board, but like for me, cinematic is like something that sounds like something that would go in a movie, or something like epic, like really big, a lot of orchestra stuff, right? Strings and brass, and like the background music to a Marvel movie, right? Like that kind of powerful, epic, regal cinematic sound. That's a lot of the stuff that I do.
For The Birth of a King, How did you decide? Well, let's start this. What was the inspiration that drove you to put this together?
Well, like I said, when I was in 2005, I was actually a student in college in a music class, and one of our assignments was to like reimagine a Christmas song. And so I did the arrangement of Joy of the World that's on the record. I did that in college, and I had so much fun doing it. I was like, man, someday I want to do a whole album of Christmas songs where I get to do that, put my own spin on it. Some of them are a little more true, to the traditional, you know, version, which is kind of done with like an epic orchestral feel. And other songs I just kind of completely flipped and reimagined and wrote new, choruses or changed some melodies just to make it fit the cohesive sound that I wanted the whole record to have. Now over the last 15 years, it's obviously, it's shifted a little bit what the exact sound would sound like. But the last several years, I knew I wanted it to be like a movie score to Christmas, right? Because if you think about the story of Christmas, right? If you just like the tagline, or the synopsis would be, a king is coming to save the entire world. Like that's so epic, right? Like, and I figured like, man, we need a soundtrack to that. It sounds just as epic as that story is, And so that's kind of, I have a TV screen on my studio and I play movies on silent while I work just for like visual inspiration, right? So I put up Lord of the Rings on the TV for almost 6 months while I was working on this album because I wanted it to sound like what it would be if they made a Lord of the Rings type movie about the birth of the king, And so that was kind of like my visual inspiration.
Usually when I'm talking to somebody about their Christmas album, I ask them, because usually it's 12, 13, 14 songs, how they picked the songs and narrowed it down and everything. But this one has the Birth of a King has 17 tracks. Was there anything that didn't make the cut that you wanted to do?
No, interestingly enough, I feel like this is a very complete, I wanted it to be like an epic in the sense of the word, where it's like, this is a big, full project. It's complete. It's a one and done. I didn't want to revisit later and do more. Like I just wanted to do this one time only. And so I went through and made sure I hit like, obviously I focused on the traditional Christmas songs being the theme and the topic that I chose. And so every Christmas song that had to do with the birth of, Jesus, like I went with those songs and I made sure I hit every single one. And I don't think I'll ever add to this or make, if I were to make a deluxe, I probably should have released a shorter album first, like 12 or 13 songs, and then put out another version with 3 or 4 more. But I just decided to do it all at once. So it felt like one big story.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. And it's just amazing. The song selection, I can't really think off the top of my head I can't think of anything that's missing. It's such a terrific selection of songs and the order that you've got them in and everything. I I hesitate to say it's perfect because that sounds kind of ridiculous, but
thank you
for what you were shooting for. I feel like congratulations. You certainly hit the nail on the head. It's a terrific set of songs, for somebody who's looking for one more version of Mariah Carey's All I Really Want. You're not going to find it on this record, but it's terrific. One of the standouts for me is What Child Is This that you have done with Avril Lavigne. Was there, I know it's a little bit like asking what your favorite child is. Was there one of these that turned out that you like better than the others?
Honestly, I'm not just saying this. There's really not. My goal when I was working on this was I don't want to make one track on this album that I would want to skip, right? Like, oh, let's just skip to the next song. And so I worked really hard, at least just for me personally, that I would make something out of every song that I love that I wanted to listen to when I was done with it. And there were a couple that I could tell I was like, iffy about. And so I would scrap the idea and start over. And some of the songs, I came up with 10 or 11 different ideas until I finally landed on the right one that felt like it fit the album, it fit the project, and that I truly loved where it went. So there were ideas for some of these songs that didn't make it, but in the end, every song, ended up making the cut. I did have this big epic instrumental of Carol of the Bells that I was originally thinking I would put on there. And then it just felt really weird. It felt out of place. You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with the birth of a king or coming savior. So it just felt kind of like the black sheep of the group. So I ended up scrapping it and, not putting it on the project. But I'm very glad I did not. I feel like it would have felt a little
when you put that next to Silent Night, O Holy Night, Joy to the World, Away in a Manger, it does feel a little bit, like you said, it does feel a little bit out of place, but all of the tracks here go together so nicely. Because I was a producer at in traditional radio for a long time, I kind of know the answer to this, but most people wouldn't. How did you connect with all of the artists that are on here?
Almost all of the artists were friends or people that I had worked with before. So there weren't, I think I think I had 17 featured artists on the project. And I think 2 or 3 of them were people that I reached out to for this project that I had not worked with before. But everybody else, I knew them. We worked together before, and everyone was, excited to be a part of it. I was really grateful because, when I was working on these songs, as I was arranging the songs and coming up with the idea for them, a specific artist's voice came to my mind that I ended up latching onto and arranging around their voice and their range, and put the song in the key that would be best for them. I studied like their range, what's their highest note. And then I'm like, I'm going to try to push them one past that to get them to sing the highest note they've ever sang in their life. That was like the joke the whole time. Every artist would come in, they would just leave like looking like they just got beat up, because we'd shoot for these super crazy notes, but that's so necessary, right? To like make it feel epic and big. It has to have that powerhouse, and all the vocalists crushed it. And so anyways, I was specific. I had a specific artist in mind for every single song. And luckily, every single one of the artists that I had in mind initially, because I did the whole record instrumentally before I even asked the artist. I was just kind of hoping everyone would say yes. So it's kind of a gamble, right? Like I might get some, I might have to, go with a plan B. But I honestly, every single artist that I had in mind said yes. And so the original idea for every single song was able to be completed the way that I was hoping, and intended. So super grateful for that. And all the artists were so amazing, like coming in and just, what do you want me to try? And then we would try 30 times, to hit these ridiculous notes. And it was super fun though. Like we all had a blast. It was really fun.
I had Michael Sinatra on the podcast a couple times earlier this year, and he was talking about putting together his new Christmas release and how he had to put it together almost like a puzzle where somebody, several states away or even countries away would record their part and send it to him, and he would put it together. Was that what you had to do for this?
There were a couple artists that I had to, I FaceTimed while they recorded vocals at their studio. And so I was kind of like vocal producing through, a FaceTime call and giving them ideas and listening as they were recording, saying, what if you try this note? And, it was a collaboration. We were on the phone for 6 hours, while they're recording the song. It's a lot of the songs, since they're so, there's some songs that are very different, or a new original chorus, that I wrote for the song. So I had to like teach them over the phone, like how to sing this. So, and then they have to sing it a bunch of times so it feels natural and not like they're kind of guessing, you know what I mean? So there was some of that, but all the other stuff was done pretty much in the studio at my house. Like I did most of the, the music and the production in house. But there were a couple singers that, did it from their place, but most of them came in, it was at the very end of the process. So it was a lot later than when they were quarantining at first, you know what I mean? And we were able to knock it out and get it all done. It was awesome.
This whole project for The Birth of a King seems kind of like a big risk, because most, if not all of these songs are things traditional radio is not going to touch, because they're very tied into the birth of the king. They're very tied into the religious part of the Christmas celebration. You don't hear O Come, Emmanuel on the radio as not nearly as much as you'll hear Winter Wonderland or something like that. You had to know going in that this was kind of a big risk, right?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I had two thoughts about it. One, I was like, well, you hear, Celine Dion has a very famous version of Oh Holy Night, right? And like, there's other versions of Silent Night. Like, you do hear it from time to time. It's got to be, probably some of the songs would maybe work better than others. Like, some wouldn't be touched because of that. But at the same time, I was wanting to approach it like, even if someone doesn't necessarily believe the story of the birth of a king is true, they could still listen to this project and just enjoy the story aspect of it. Like someone that watches Lord of the Rings and they're not necessarily thinking it's a true story, right? But they're enjoying the epic story still, that it's a crazy story. And then hopefully somewhere along the way, they could still be touched by something or make them think as they're listening. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was my approach. I was like, man, even if someone doesn't really, religious music is not their thing, Christian music is not their thing, I feel like they could appreciate and enjoy the vast nature of what the story is, and it's still powerful and impactful,
Traditional radio just isn't what it once was, certainly not in 2021. And especially with the popularity of streaming. But anybody can look on Spotify even and take a look at the album and see that every single track on here has over 100,000 streams. Most of them a lot more than that. So obviously, even though maybe radio's not going to play "O Come All Ye Faithful," people want to hear it. People want to listen to this.
Yeah, I think it all feels familiar and nostalgic. You know what I mean? And so, my goal with the overall sound was, most of my audience is, gamers in their 20s, because I do a lot of epic cinematic music and hip hop beats, with it. Like the majority of a lot of the stuff that I do is, guys in their 20s who play, Fortnite or Call of Duty, whatever. But my goal for this Christmas album was to bridge the gap between that audience and my mother-in-law, who, has a furniture store that she sells like Amish furniture, and she plays music in the background of her store for, older ladies. And I'm like, man, what could I do that I can make an album where, my mom and my mother-in-law would enjoy it and play it in her store, but then I won't lose my gamer audience, the younger crowd that wants something a little more edgy a little bit, and kind of fits into what the other stuff that I do, the trailer music. So I tried to do, some of all of that and everything in between, just to bring everyone together. I wanted this to be an album that kids could listen to, 20s, 30s, 40s, and all the way up to, 60s. I wanted it to be something there were several songs for everybody, no matter who was listening. That was very intentional and very important to me, that I didn't just kind of narrow the audience. So it's kind of just a novelty album, that would only work for a small demographic one time. I wanted it to be like something that was on people's list every year, that they bring out every year for Christmas. It's part of their family tradition. When they put up their tree, they put in The Birth of a King and listen to it in the background. Like I wanted it to be like that, because I had several albums. Everyone has songs or albums at Christmas time that they just listen to every year, the same thing. It's like part of the nostalgia for it. And so my goal was to hopefully provide something like that for someone out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And for anybody who's listening to this who's not familiar with the idea of cinematic music, and you hear us talking about it, it's not that you have to sit down and listen to the whole album from start to finish to get it.
Right.
You can pick and choose which tracks. If you're putting this into, because lots of people are all about their Christmas mixes, and the songs certainly work like that too. But you don't have to feel like, okay, I love Silent Night, but it's the 10th song on the album. Do I have to listen to the first 9? Am I going to be lost? Because it's not that kind of thing. Each song is its own thing, but they all also work together. And the idea is just this huge soundscape of Christmas.
Yeah. And I would say, that while I say I don't have a favorite, I can't choose, right? I feel like the 2 tracks that have just organically stood out that I've found between people listening is Noel, this new version of, it's like the first Noel with a new added part at the end. It's called Noel, He is Born. And then the version of Oh Holy Night, which is just like it starts really peaceful on the piano and builds into this big orchestra. And it's a duet between Torrin Wells and Cersina, who just steal the show with their vocal performance. I mean, the end of that song is, we all get goosebumps still every time we listen to how amazing. I mean, we worked for a long time, to like get these notes and work on the harmonies and all that stuff. And that just seems to be, the 2 songs that resonated the most, at least year 1, which was last year. We're gearing up for a big year 2 push right now. It's funny how I learned, this is the first time I did a Christmas album, so I learned how short the Christmas music listening season really is. I mean, my wife starts listening November 1st. She's one of those, like, loves Christmas music. She'll put it on as soon as she'll get away with it. So the day after Halloween, it's like all about Christmas for her. But I realized that's not the majority. Like most people, the majority is actually after December 15th. Which I thought Thanksgiving was the next, and maybe a couple people Thanksgiving or December 1st, but like you really have just a couple weeks, 10 days, really. Like this is a 10-day blitz. Let's do as much as we can in 10 days. And then it's dormant for the next 11 months. And you got to figure out how you're going to bring it back around next Christmas,
Yeah, it's a very short window for most people. I mean, the Sounds of Christmas is on all year round, and we play Halloween music in October, but otherwise it's all Christmas music. And I didn't do that because I thought, well, shoot, everybody's going to want to be listening to Christmas music in June, because no,
Right.
no, they're not. But what I found is that a lot of times people want a little feel of that Christmas spirit, and they like to have somewhere that they can go, even if it's not during the officially Christmas season time that they want to get. They want to get that, and I find that I do have people all over the world who tune in all year long. So
yeah,
so it's
I had a few people message me and tell me that they're listening to the Christmas album through June and July, and I'm like, that's crazy. I mean, you'll always find some people, that you're right, that might just enjoy a song and they want to listen to it, and it gives them a feeling, inside. And that's awesome. It's really awesome that happens.
Yeah. And there are some songs that immediately do that for people. And it's not the same song for everybody. I probably get somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 songs sent to me every year for people who want their music to be added to the station. And we just can't add that many every year. And some of them aren't, I don't want to say good enough, but the artists aren't there yet.
Right.
But Oh Holy Night and Silent Night are the 2 songs for me that still deliver that Christmas spirit anytime I hear them. I hear so many others that a lot of times it just doesn't take me there. But I hear Oh Holy Night or Silent Night, and I'm at midnight mass. I'm
right.
absolutely feeling it. I can, I can smell the Christmas tree. I get that almost indescribable feeling. And that's what I get listening to The Birth of a King. I get that feeling. It always, for me, it always delivers. So that's something really amazing that you've captured.
Well, and that's really awesome to hear, because I started this album in, I think it was March and April, and I'm like, man, it's really hard to get inspired to record Christmas music in April.
Oh yeah.
So I have like my whole studio is Philips Hue lights. So I was turning them like green and red, and I put up a Christmas tree in my studio, and I was just trying to like feel Christmassy. And then I realized, it's really not, it's not, first of all, it's not going to happen just from making my, studio green and red. And it's not really a green and red album. Like you said, it's not Winter Wonderland and All I Want for Christmas Is You. It's, the Lord of the Rings ish. So I kind of changed my tones and made it more, like wintry gray skies, mountains, castles. Like that's kind of the epic vibe that I needed, visually to like go where I wanted to go with the album. But I wanted to make sure, like you said, I wanted to make sure it had the thing that when people heard it, they felt like Christmas. And it was fun exploring for that. You have to like work to find that and make sure that you're capturing that feeling of Christmas in someone's chest. It's a tough thing,
Yeah, it really is. With a project as big as this, something that has been on your agenda for 15 years, really, until you finally saw its completion and it's out there in the world. Did you have any sort of, I don't want to say regret, but when it was all done, sometimes in January, people get a little bit sad that Christmas is over, that there was this big buildup and it happened and now it's over. Did you have any sort of feeling like that when this was something you'd been working on or working towards for so long, and then there it is and it's done?
That's an interesting point. I don't know if I felt, I don't think I regretted anything. I think I felt more like, oh, well, that was quick. Like all this buildup and then it's over, like you said, but knowing it's going to come again next year and the year after. And what can we do to, like, for me, it was just such a fun, like lifelong bucket list project that I wanted to do. It was really special to me. And so I was like, man, what, for the next 10 years, that's the passion project that I want to pour into promoting every year for the next decade, just because it's just that project to me. I think it always will be. I'll do several other things, but that stood out as special. There's no other project that I've been wanting to do for 10 15 years that I haven't gotten to yet. That was the only one on my radar. So I don't know if I'll ever really quite have that again, that pressure of like, man, making something that I want to make sure lives up to the expectation in my own head, right? Like, and really pouring 6 months, 12, 13 hours a day. I was like in my studio with like messy hair and just scribbled, notepads and paper all over the place. Like, some crazy scientist that's like working on something, that's how I felt in the process of that. And it was just like, just really rewarding, to finally put it out and just continue to, promote it the best I can for the next, several years and just see what happens.
And you have said that there's not a follow-up album. I mean, obviously, The Birth of a King 2. I mean,
right.
Not really.
The birth of another king.
Right. The only thing that I could think of, and especially with all of the conversation about the Lord of the Rings as sort of just the kind of epic inspiration, is some kind of an Easter album that actually could be called The Return of the King. Anything like that on your radar? Or
I don't know. I thought about possibly, is there a way to expand this King series, right? Being, the almost doing a double album, like the death of a king and the king is alive, or something with the death and resurrection kind of thing for Easter.
Right.
I feel like there's not quite that many Easter songs. And I also feel like Easter songs don't really extend to, as many people as like Christmas songs. It's like
Certainly.
the one time a year that like someone who's never, gone to church in their life still knows Silent Night. You know what I mean? Like it's still, they're familiar with it. I feel like the only Easter songs are probably older hymns or some recent, worship songs or something. So it is an interesting idea. I'm not sure, I don't have this grand vision for it yet, but I do think it's a pretty interesting idea to like continue the series in the same way that I, kind of looked at Christmas. Are there other events that I could make a soundtrack for around? That would be, if an idea comes, I certainly won't ignore it.
Now, the idea of cinematic music is certainly something that's not just about Christmas for you. You've got 6 or 7 albums of cinematic songs where you've taken songs some people may know, some people may not, and done the same sort of thing to them to make them sort of an epic version of the song. Have there been any Christmas songs in any of that?
Well, I did put out a Carol of the Bells like 8 years ago. The one I said I was going to maybe put on this Christmas album. I was going to redo it. Now I was going to like redo the track, but since I decided not to, there is a version of Carol of the Bells. It's a little more like piano driven. It's like a Beethoven piano piece mixed with epic orchestra, but all of those cinematic albums I put out, those are like original songs that me and the artist write together, and we write them for TV and film. But then I've also done a couple covers. Like I did one album of covers where, it's songs like Can't Help Falling in Love and You Are So Beautiful, In the End by Linkin Park. We did some, familiar songs as well to pitch for movies and TV film, but also, just to release for people to listen to. A lot of people listen to epic cinematic music, but I don't think a lot of people know about that crowd or that genre of music. If it's not country pop or hip hop, it's kind of just not really considered. But like, man, there's YouTube channels with millions and millions and millions and millions of subscribers, of people that listen to this music when they work out or when they're, on their way to soccer practice to amp them up, like just to make life feel exciting and epic. Like a lot of people listen to this stuff,
Oh yeah. And again, and I hope every single podcast I do doesn't sound like me wailing on traditional radio, but really traditional radio seems to have this view of their listeners that they only like this very narrow slice of music. And I think everyone likes lots of different things. You can like Bon Jovi and you can like Frank Sinatra and you can like whatever is the newest thing that's coming out today, and you can like the Glenn Miller Band. And it's just crazy that they have this small view of it. And I think that's one of the reasons that streaming is so big and YouTube is so big, because everybody can go and they can find exactly what they want. And it doesn't have to be the same hits. When I was still in radio and they started to do the all Christmas music thing around Thanksgiving, I love Christmas music. So I was excited at first, and then I was disappointed because it's the same short list of songs over and over. Just like what radio does the rest of the year with the regular music that they play. And people just don't listen like that anymore.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's more of a playlist kind of generation, where you get to compile your own songs that you like. And some of them might be, a indie artist, that has 3,000 listeners, and like they're the only ones that have it on their Christmas playlist, and that feels special to them. You know what I mean? Because it's not this, massive thing. But yeah, it is funny. You're right. Like radio I think it's kind of a older mentality, like thinking it has to be this, or it's not going to work on radio. Like I think more things would work on radio than radio people think would work.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's gotten to the point now where people like you who are creating music, don't have to have that in the forefront of your project. How's this going to play on radio? What part of this album is going to be the single that's going to get on radio stations all over the country? Artists don't think like that anymore.
Right. More and more. I've had so many artists come into my studio and they're like, oh, I don't want to write for radio. Let's just make something that I love. And I think that's so important for artists to make just music that they love, not to try to fit into what will work for this or what will work for that. Like, if you start making music that you think will only work in a certain scenario or environment, you're going to lose excitement and passion for it, and you're going to stop doing it. That's why a lot of bands, after 2 albums, you never hear from them ever again, because they were just trying to do what they were told would work. And then even if it does work, they don't enjoy it because they're like, that's not even the music I want to do. At first it's exciting. Like, whoa, we got 1 million streams. We got this, we got a song on radio. But like, honestly, any kind of achievement or accolade or whatever you might reach or get to, it kind of feels empty after it. You know what I mean? You think like, ooh, if I could just achieve this or get this stat line in my bio, that would be, amazing. And I would be so happy every day. And it's just simply not true. Like, you can be miserable if you're just working on something, using your creative gift and passion towards something that you're not excited about is probably one of the worst things for a creative to spend their time doing. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And and just in talking about that with you now, that's part of what I think makes The Birth of a King really special, is that you can listen to these songs and you can feel that the people who are making them, whether it's Tommee doing producing and doing music, or whether it's a particular artist that's singing or whatever it is, you can feel that it matters to them. Because there are going to be Christmas albums that come out this year, and the ones that came out before, and ones that come out next year, where you're going to hear songs from artists that I'm not going to name any names, but where they go through 8, 9, 10 Christmas songs that we all know, and you're like, it's another version of Jingle Bell Rock, and there's nothing special about it. And it feels like, and I like Jingle Bell Rock, don't get me wrong, but when somebody just goes in and plays the notes on the page, and and it's the same as any other version, and you can and you feel like they're just doing what somebody said. Let's do a Christmas album. Okay, here are the songs.
Totally.
Okay. Yeah. Whereas,
and I think that every artist kind of feels like they have to do a Christmas album, and it feels like a side project, kind of like, oh, let's just do this in a couple of weeks and get it out, right? It's like, we don't have an album for 2 years. Let's put out a Christmas album. And it's like, it's kind of just thrown together so you can hear that voice singing the songs that we all know, but there's nothing really new about it or whatever. So that's why, like, I totally agree. Like, it was interesting. Like, this is like my most main project I've ever done. It's not like a side project, put together. Most people probably wouldn't see the value in spending 6 months on a Christmas record. It's like, let's just come in and sing them in a couple days, so we have one. But I wanted it to be like a special journey that I would remember forever. You know what I mean? I think it deserves that. Yeah.
So is there anything big like this that you have on the horizon?
I don't know. I don't know what it is yet. I'm kind of in the place of like, I just did that. I obviously have projects that I'm working on for, in my cinematic sound, but I don't know if it's on the scale of this Christmas record. It's more like a project for TV and film, or whatever. I really enjoy doing covers of songs, like songs that are super well known, and just kind of flipping them and doing something new with them. I think I'll probably be doing more covers in the next couple of years, but yeah, I don't really have the next big album idea yet. I'm just kind of waiting for that to hit me.
I got to say, I really enjoy the covers album that you did. I think this came out last year.
It did. Yep.
Okay.
Early last year.
and it's a really interesting mix of songs, and it really underscores what we were talking about the way people listen, the way real people listen to music, because you've got Eye of the Tiger and You Are So Beautiful, and you've got In the End, the Linkin Park song, and you've got Gilligan's Island. And I think that's just I think that's terrific that it's just that it's I don't want to say it's an eclectic mix. I think that this is the way that real people listen to music. They like a little bit of everything.
I feel like I should explain that one, because there is a story. I forgot when you were naming the songs. I forgot that was on there. I actually had most of the album done, and I was like, it just feels like it needs something that's like me, like really off the wall and like random. Like that's my kind of humor, is like random. Mm-hmm. And I've always done like, parodies and funny videos my whole life growing up. Like that's just a part of me. And I'm like, I need something on here that shows that we don't take ourselves too seriously. We could do something funny, but make it cool at the same time, And so my friend Nicole was over. I was like, what if we do like a old, like a 90s sitcom theme song and trailerize it, like make it dark and epic, like the Full House theme song, like make it like we were going through all these ideas, Family Matters, what could, the Folgers theme song, like what could we do that's like funny? And as we went through, we were looking at lists of songs, and we were like, what about Gilligan's Island? Because it kind of already has like a minor chords and a feel to it. And so we just like, what do we reimagine the Gilligan's Island theme song? Because it'll be hilarious that we did it, but then when people listen to it, it'll be like one of the coolest songs on the record. And so we just came up with that idea to do that. And I think that was really fun. I was like, it'll either flop or people will love it, but it doesn't matter, because it was just super fun to create that and make it and just put it out and just show a different side. You know what I mean?
Oh, and the really fun thing about it, at least for me, is that you can listen to this covers album and you probably know, if you don't know every song, almost every song. So the words, but they're different. So there's that brief period of time as the song's going on where your brain is trying to place where I know this from. And it does the same thing with Gilligan's Island, that you're just, because it's unexpected. If you're not looking at the track list, it's unexpected. And you're like, oh, I know this one. Okay. And and it takes a minute for it to hit, and then it's funny and it's cool at the same time.
Yes. Oh, totally. No, and I think I'll probably explore that side a little bit, just because it's like you could cover songs all day long, and then it just starts to become a little boring if you're just doing the same thing over and over. So when you do something like that, where you really reimagine something creatively and make something that's awesome out of a funny idea, like I just love that, and it's funny to watch people react too and think, how are they going to respond to this?
It reminds me a little bit of Chris Cornell. He recorded a version of Billie Jean, and it's a very bluesy, almost visceral kind of version. And if you don't know it's coming, you're just sort of listening to his album, and that song comes on, and you're like, why do I know all the words to this?
Yeah.
and then it hits you. Oh my God, that's the Michael Jackson song. And it's the similar thing with this. You're listening to this, and you're like, okay, I know that one. Okay, I know that one. And there's two very different takes on Can't Help Falling in Love. And then you get to this one, you're like, wait, where's this from? Oh my God, that's Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, and I also wanted people that would look at the track list to be like, okay. And then when they hear that, to be so curious, what? They did Gilligan's Island, and instantly click on it to listen to it.
Yeah.
Like curiosity. What would Tommee Profitt do with Gilligan's Island? I got to hear right now.
Well, and it's funny, when I first saw that, I thought, okay, I'm sure that's not what I think it is. It's got it.
Not that Gilligan's Island.
Right. It's probably something
No, it
else.
is. No, it actually is.
Yeah. But it's just terrific. And it absolutely shows the sense of humor and that you don't take it too seriously and that it's fun. And then, and I love that bit of surprise when you realize what the song is. I think that's terrific. What else is coming up for you? Anything else that you want to mention?
Or besides just hitting the Christmas record again and then seeing what next year. I mean, I do a lot of producing for other people as well, right? I'm always working with NF. He's one of my closest friends. We do all his music together. So I'm always working with him, working with a few other artists. And then in between, I just work on this trailer stuff, just coming up with ideas. I'll just keep making covers and original cinematic songs, but I don't know exactly what they're going to look like yet, how they'll be packaged. I have this series of I started with Cinematic Songs Volume 1, right? And those are like the original songs that we write for movie trailers. And it just kind of kept going over the years. And we just put out Volume 7 earlier this year. So I imagine at some point next year, there will probably be a Volume 8. That seems like the next natural progression. I'm going to stop probably at Volume 10. I'll do 10 and then I'll keep making them, but I'll just call them something different, because when was the last Volume 11 of anything that you were excited about hearing about?
Right. Oh, look, it's Volume 27. Yeah.
Now that's what I call Cinematic 42.
Right. What's the best way for people to find you?
Okay, so all of my socials and website, everything is just Tommee Profitt. However, I spell my name a little differently. Tommee is spelled with 2 E's instead of a Y. So I always say Tommee Profitt is 2 M's, 2 E's, 1 F, 2 T's. No one ever gets that right. They'll spell my name I-E or give me 2 F's in my last name. So that's my my little motto is 2 M's, 2 E's, 1 F, 2 T's.
And everybody can find whatever they need to know from your website.
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, a website. I'm on TikTok now, trying to figure that whole thing out. And anywhere that you consume any of that stuff, they could find me.
Terrific. Well, Tommee, thanks so much for spending some time with us on the podcast today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was fun talking. Appreciate it.
And thank you so much for listening, helping me share some Christmas spirit, and for helping this podcast continue to grow. We're on about 24 different podcasting sites. And since you're listening to this now, you obviously found us somewhere. But if there's another site you like to use for podcasts, check out our podcast page on our website for the complete list of everywhere you can listen to the Sounds of Christmas podcast. And that website is soundsofchristmas.com. Then just click on the podcast tab. For the Sounds of Christmas station, to listen to the music, you'll need to stick with our website or our app in the Google Play Store. If you have comments or suggestions, feel free to reach out to me on social media or through our website. Thanks again, and may you always believe in Santa Claus.